None of us have yet seen an ideally perfect man, and yet, without that ideal, we cannot progress. Swami Vivekananda. Namaskar, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sahibjeet Kaur, and it's an absolute delight for me to welcome you all to the second day of the National Youth Festival, the 25th edition. Ladies and gentlemen, as we celebrate the 159th birth anniversary of a perpetual youth icon and a visionary, Swami Vivekananda, we also celebrate an idea. The idea to grow together through experience as a nation, to create through participation, and to learn from all what diversity has to offer. Our sessions today, ladies and gentlemen, will focus on the theme of national character, nation building, and homegrown change leaders. So thank you very much for joining in today. Stick around and make the most of it. It's about time that we begin with the first session of the day. The mediocre mentor tells, the good mentor explains, a superior one demonstrates, but the greatest mentor inspires. Ladies and gentlemen, our topic for the first session of the day is how to find a mentor and your true calling in life. Our speaker for the session considers himself as an explorer and is helping a lot of young minds to find a sense of direction. A proponent of Sri Aurobindo ji, Manoj Pavitran ji is an impact strategist who has been training and mentoring young through unique programming at Auroville. Ladies and gentlemen, his program is helping thousands of young people across the country to navigate the uncertainties and parking them to an elevated consciousness through the inspirational life and works of Sri Aurobindo. Ladies and gentlemen, join me as I welcome Mr. Manoj Pavitran, co-founder, Poonam Center for Integrality, Auroville. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Greetings from Auroville to everyone. It's a great joy to connect with you and share with you the essence of what I have learned over the years, what I have been applying in my own life and its journey. Finding a mentor, what does it really mean? We have teachers all around. Now, who is the special one we are seeking? What is the purpose of this particular mentor we are referring to? And that's a mystery. That's a mystery that I would like to explore today with you. Because this mentor is always there, deep within you, calling you, guiding you, without necessarily you recognizing it, knowing it. A mentor who is veiled, hidden within you. Now, what is the purpose of this mentor? What he or she is up to? What's your relationship with that mentor? How do you connect to that mentor? What will happen when you connect consciously? Now, this is the exciting part. Maybe the word exciting is not the right word, because all forms of excitement in a way create certain turbulence with which we miss the guidance. There are moments in your life when everything is quiet. A deeper sense awakens, where deeper questions awaken. Now, this can come to you often in moments of crisis. And when you're in your teens and you're crossing over to your 20s, there is this process of becoming a true individual. An individual with a conscious purpose. And these questions burn through you. What's my work? What are my relationships? And in our education system, unfortunately, these are not sufficiently addressed. We are given knowledge and skills about external things, but not necessarily helping you to find your true mentor within, or your purpose. So we jump into life without these anchor points, directions, and come across quite many challenging crisis points, seasons, moments. And it so happened to me as well. Like any youth in India, society feeds you with its own notions about what you are meant to be. And as usual, like everyone else, I went for engineering. That was one of the options that was given among the very few. But during the studies, deeper questions were waking up. And I ran into a deep crisis of life in terms of what exactly am I going to do with the engineering skills I was getting? How does it serve the society? And when I got an exposure to what is happening, or I started questioning what is happening. Remember, this was happening in the 80s, when environmental movements were just picking up. In today's world, ecological crisis, climate crisis, these are well established. Youth are very aware. But in those days, it was not so. But the wave of awakening was already there. There is something wrong with the way we are engaging with nature, natural resources, and the way we are applying our technologies to produce goods and services, which in a way is destroying our ecosystem. And as an engineer, you are being part of a system that is destroying, and there is a techno-economic system that in a way is not caring neither for nature or for people. And that insight or that awareness was troubling, deeply troubling. Yes, of course, as a professional, you can earn your money, you can be successful in your career, but what is the consequence on the planet, in the society, in the life of the people? That question was deepening. That's when I realized things are not so glorious as it was presented. Pollution was picking up, environmental degradation was picking up, and I could foresee this. This is a dangerous path ahead. Being born and brought up in Kerala, I was also pretty much drawn to communism, for example. And my faith was also in science. So these two were the models that I was inspired by and following. And as I dived deeper into these two topics, I realized that communism itself was failing. And at that time, there was USSR. And it was beyond the propaganda materials that we were receiving, knew that it was on the verge of collapse. An ideal society, society of equality, that one dreamt of, actually it was failing. The idea was failing. Then there was science, which gave confidence in all things. Because our knowledge system was based on science and technology and its might and right. And as I dive deeper into my own deeper questions about ethics, the right things to do, purpose of life, meaning of life, there wasn't nothing much the science and technology could offer. So there was a crisis building up. What appeared to be an incredibly wonderful life ahead turned out to be not so well thought out. One was living randomly by chance, following the social norms, being conditioned by the society. That's when the deep questions begins to stir you up. So we have our normal teachers in the college teaching regular subjects. And you see that that type of mentoring, teaching is insufficient. You need something deeper. Where are they? How do you find them? Where do you get answers to deeper questions in life? Yes, of course, it is possible to live without these deep questions. Just being another consumer, unthinking, uncaring, without larger purpose than one's own little circle of interest, personal success. But the moment you expand your awareness beyond you into the larger society, into the world at large, and you look at things from that perspective, it will trouble you. That's where the seeker is born. The quest to find a deeper meaning beyond the material success, beyond money, beyond regular wealth, personal success, beyond marriage, family, children. What is the greater purpose? And what is happening in the world? These questions, when they come alive, when you know that you do not know, and the models that you believed in begins to crack up, and you have nowhere to go. And this is also the period where you experience great emotional intensity. For example, I fell in love and I discovered the intensity of that emotion. So I was wondering, what is this experience? And there was no education for it. No one taught us anything about love. No one taught us anything about heart, its longings. Yes, we learn about quadratic equations and science and technology and all the external systems or biological reproduction and all that. But there is no education for the heart. And you're supposed to stumble your way through. And your heart breaks and you don't know what to do with it. There is no way to mend it, heal it. So all these experiences, sexuality, love, money, success, fame, society, career, relationship, all these are churning and turning around. In your 20s, these are the basic questions that will trouble. You need to find the right answers. So as the inquiry began, I knew I have to look beyond the conventional books to dive deeper. So that yearning to know, that itself sets in motion the law of coincidence, mysterious coincidences. You may think that it is random. You come across a book that suddenly gives you a pointer. And I still remember coming across first Jiddu Krishnamurthy's book, and I felt maybe
Sorry,
I need to read
I'm
this.
not sure about that.
So I saw Krishnamurthy's book, and I felt maybe I need to read this one. And I remember reading first time.
I don't have an answer for that.
Alexa, stop, please. Sorry about the intervention from the intelligent systems intervening. Reading for the first time and suddenly discovering here is someone talking about what is going on inside you. And he made perfect sense. And the sudden sense of looking at your own thoughts, thought process, your own awakening of the intelligence, self-awareness, attention, unwavering attention, things that are very intimate and real within you. And that opened a whole door for me. And I remember again coming across Sri Aurobindo. I saw his image as a young revolutionary. There was a small paragraph about him, and that image stayed with me. And these are really like dots here and there. Suddenly, you're drawn to something, and you don't know why you're drawn to it, but it stays within you as a dot that was unforgettable. So I began my inquiry. I started reading extensively, particularly authors like not Deepak Chopra, Tao of Physics, author Capra. Yes. So these books, Zen and Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, in the 80s, these books were very, very popular. And coming from the science perspective, how a new wave was arising. And there's a turning point that is coming. But they were all pointing towards something called Eastern wisdom. And that's when I realized being born and brought up in India doesn't mean that you get to know the Indian culture, Indian ethos, India's great wisdom. I was completely cut off from it, in spite of being born and brought up in this culture. And that's the tragedy of the system of education that we have inherited, the post-colonial legacy. And this question was burning in me. What is Indian culture? What is this Eastern wisdom Fridge of Capra and people like that were pointing towards? And I did not know. And I did not even know where to look for. But that question was growing. So this is something that I want you to remember. When you have a living question, it's not the answer that matters. It is the question that makes you a seeker. You have a quest. Do you have a living question? So this question was coming alive in me. What is Eastern wisdom? What is India's ancient wisdom? And I did not know. That embarrassed me. That pained me. And I did not even know where to look for it. First of all, our education system put aside, or our society put aside, all our ancient treasures to be as religion or philosophy or superstition, and we never get to know them. And to my great, I would say, luck, I came across Swami Vivekananda's writing. Though I had heard about him plenty from everyone, but you never study the man, what he spoke. We take them for granted. They are around, great beacons of light. But what did they stand up for? I was not there. I did not know. So when I saw his book once, again, that magnetism that draws you into that curiosity, the trail of inquiry. I want to know what he has to say. And I remember reading his speech at Chicago. I remember that goosebumps that came with it, that intensity of truth that he spoke, the power that was flowing through him. When that enters you, you know that a power has entered. Vivekananda was no more someone who lived in the past, but someone who is living, dynamic power, awakening the nation. And to be touched by his force, his knowledge, his wisdom. That was transformative. That propelled and that pointed towards ancient wisdom of this nation. The whole science of consciousness, the whole evolutionary process that is called yoga, and the conscious way to accelerate our evolution, transform our nature, upgrade ourselves to higher levels of consciousness. The whole science and technology of that, the science of consciousness. And I did not know this. Being born and brought up in this country is insufficient. Unless we dive into these sources, we wouldn't discover our own science, the science of consciousness, which gave a profound perspective on life. And soon, that inquiry eventually led me to discover Sri Aurobindo. Meanwhile, I took 1 year off. After engineering, I realized I need time to figure this out. There was already a job waiting. I decided, no, I'm not going for a job. I want to study. I want to study and I want to find out what is life all about. And what this civilization has to offer. So from Swami Vivekananda, through him, I discovered Sri Aurobindo. And discovering Sri Aurobindo was really like finding an ocean of wisdom, of love, of great perfection, of great synthesis. He not only gave a profound vision of the past of ancient India and how that history has evolved, and he also pointed towards the future, not only of India, of the world. And I discovered that he was a freedom fighter, who was the man who had that boldness to declare that India must be free. He was the one who set that will to freedom. Way before Gandhiji came to picture. Awakening of the nation. With that mantra, Vande Mataram. And that cry for freedom. But he also pointed towards something far greater. That is India's work in the world. Because his work was transcending the freedom of India, touching upon a larger crisis humanity was heading. He saw that world was heading for an evolutionary crisis. The system of civilization we were building on, based on our limited knowledge of science and technology, was reaching a level of complexity human mind will not be able to handle it. And the destruction, chaos, was bound to expand and enlarge, engulfing the whole planet. And today it is visible to all of us. But he was saying this more than 100 years ago. We needed a greater knowledge, a greater vision, a greater power of consciousness to cross over this crisis. And there was an evolutionary transformation happening on the planet, an evolutionary future of humanity. Various stages of social development, how a society evolved, how consciousness evolved. And we can consciously participate. And this nation, this culture, has invested at least 5,000 years of its research and development in this field of consciousness, its evolution, its growth. We call it yoga. I don't mean by yoga asanas, but the science of consciousness, the science of accelerating our evolution. And Swami Vivekananda boldly declared that each one of us is potentially divine. And there is a divine potential like a seed within us. That can awaken, grow, enlarge, expand, reveal itself. Through that individual purpose, collective purpose, larger evolutionary purpose in nature, everything fell in place. And this divine potential, seated deep within, is the true mentor, inner guide, seated within. And remember, getting to know this in your 20s, that there is a mentor within you. You are like a seed, there's a potential within you. Once it awakens, it will propel you on a path of your Swadharma, your divine possibility. And here is the methodology of yoga, of transformation. By accessing it, following its call, following that systematic process of our own transformation, of evolution. This possibility opened up. And I was amazed. Such a possibility exists and no one told us. Today we know that our mobile phones are evolving faster than us. Technologies are evolving. Everything is continuously upgrading themselves. But do we know how to upgrade ourselves? That science, the science of upgrading ourselves, upgrading our consciousness, upgrading our instrumentality, upgrading our mind, our energy, our physicality and its possibilities. This nation knew. And everything of this nation, this culture, was built around that. Its music, its art, its architecture, its poetry, its polity. Everything was oriented towards accelerating and bringing forth the divine potential in each one of us. And that remains dormant if we are not aware. It has to guide from behind the veil. So the path was clear. Humanity is heading or was heading for an evolutionary crisis. And here is a nation that has done R&D for 5,000 years at least and distilled that know-how of how to evolve, which brings that larger purpose, evolutionary purpose in nature, in collective life, in individual life. The key that gives not only the dynamic power of effectuation, but also the meaning and purpose of life. So through Sri Aurobindo, I discovered that whole possibility, whole science. And I also came to know about Auroville through that. There is a whole city dedicated to that purpose. Whole new society in the making, where evolution is the keyword. Unending education, research and development in consciousness. How do we build a society that is directed towards this? How do we reorganize the society beyond just the consumerism? Towards an evolutionary possibility that is unprecedented. A collective evolution, not just individual liberation. So I came to Auroville and joined here to be part of this laboratory, where you live through the complexity of life, embrace all the complexity of life, and learn to transform yourself. And here is where that whole process of first listening to that inner call. And how do we listen to that inner call? How do we get that message right? It's like you have an antenna to capture signals from the outer space. That's science is doing now. Similarly, as an individual, how do you tune your antenna to listen deep into the inner space, to get that signal from your mentor within? On the other side, we have great beacons of light like Swami Vivekananda, Sri Aurobindo, who opened the path for us, who are not belonging to the past, they belong to the future of humanity. Living powers guiding all of us when we learn to tune into them. And their own guidance say, look within, we will find that light, that guidance. And to do so, we need to prepare ourselves. And how do we prepare ourselves? If each one of us is like a seed with tremendous potential, as you know, a seed may not sprout. It can continue in sleep state, but once it awakens, it cannot stop. So there is a dharma for each one, a true potential, a divine potential. Once that awakens, once we listen to that call, then we have this whole preparatory work to do so that that light and power from within can grow smoothly, steadily, reveal our potential, our power, propel us on a path of accelerated evolution. And there begins the systematic process of developing each and every layer of our instrumental nature. You take the mind. Mind is where currently education is largely focused on, feeding the mind with information, largely information about world outside, about technologies, about social systems, biology, chemistry, physics, but hardly about mind itself. And one of the very foundational things in opening ourselves to a greater power of evolution is to go beyond the power of thought, analysis, reason. They have their place, but limited place. When we bring the whole thinking process into a deep silence, when you bring silence into the mind, when we bring peace into the heart, as Patanjali would say, yoga, chitta, vritti, nirodha. In that deep silence, in that deep peace, when the sky is vast and blue, we begin to receive the true light from within. It's like the mind is ready to receive the reflections or the rays of a greater consciousness arising from within. And now, that is a secret key. As long as the mind is so noisy about its own chatter, there is very little chance to even get to know the mentor within, the one who is guiding you from within. So when that deeper silence is brought in, through the power of concentration, deep listening, widening, dissolving into that stillness within, you're beginning to open up to a new possibility, a new you. Something that is beyond what social conventions are teaching you to be. Something that is beyond the external inputs from the society. There is an inner light, inner force, inner guidance. So training of the mind from wandering from one thing to other become the very first necessity. Dharana, ability to hold your attention unwavering. In today's world, when you're bombarded by social media noise, when the mind is wandering from one noise to another noise, when you're dragged away in the confusions of the society, in the media noise of the society, you hardly have a chance to listen to your own heart, to your own soul. We are so filled with information. When this whole information layer is brought to silence, when that ray of awakening reaches you, with that comes inspiration. It inspires you because it shows you new possibilities, things that you never thought before, things that you never imagined before. And you will discover that there is a whole new path that is opening before you. And you can see a transition happening from, say, a career by chance to a career by choice to a career by grace. Career by chance is when you live the normal, routine, unconscious, habitual life. Things just happen. And career by choice is you apply your rational intelligence and choose your path, apply your will. Third is the career by grace, when that inner light awakens and leads you. The true mentor within reveals the presence, leads you. There's a calling. You're meant to do something. Your birth is with a purpose. And that begins to get revealed. Your true dharma, your swadharma, which is in alignment with Yuga Dharma, Dharma of the time, begins to align your personal life, aspirations, movements with a larger collective life. So when you begins to listen to that subtle inner guidance, then comes utmost sincerity that is required. If you are not sincere to that call, if you are not sincerely following it up, you lose the path. Second, faith. Faith in that guidance from within. Faith in your own call. So sincerity and faith to that inner guide. A deep obedience to that inner guidance. That's what opens the doors of possibilities. Opening a growing synchronicity, a growing set of chances that creates life conditions, brings things into your life easily or naturally. Things fall in place. And you'll be surprised by where you reach. So in order to get that inner guidance, inner light, and to be sincere to it, and to access and being faithful to it, and having access to that inner strength, this is where you need to bring in necessary peacefulness into your instrumentation. That is in your nervous system, your emotional being. And our being of emotions is so full of likings and dislikings, attractions and repulsions. And it is caught in this incessant reactivity, moving from sorrow to excitement and happiness. So this whole emotional being, how to open and refine these emotions? The whole emotional attractions that we experience, we call it love. And it comes mixed with sexual attractions. And how do we discern between a sexual attraction and emotional attraction and a true love that radiates from within? And there is no education for it. Our system of education doesn't deal with it. And you're left to do on your own. But there is this whole field of science of consciousness that can open the door, show us what to do, what not to do. Or how to train the emotional being to become increasingly calm and to find the true radiance of your soul's love, soul's delight, which is very different from this reactivity and self-centered attractions and repulsions. So that growing self-awareness about what's happening to your emotions, similarly, what is happening to your energy level. You know that you need to charge your mobile phone every day to keep it going. Otherwise, energy depletes. How do you keep your energy levels high as an individual? Not just high occasionally, but steady and stable, so that you can persevere in whatsoever the path that you choose, which requires that effort, spending of energy. So the whole science of conserving your energy, heightening your energy, so that you have opulent vitality, you can persevere without getting fatigued, without getting tired, without getting exhausted easily. A mind that is steady, focused, and energy that is calm and wide and abundant, an emotional being that is calm, sensitive, open, an open mind, an open heart, an open abundance of energy. How do we access that? These become real questions. This is where daily transformational practices are required. To tune the instrumentation so that you can be receptive, well prepared. The same way the senses. Senses are craving after sensations, pleasant or unpleasant. Running away from unpleasant sensations, craving for pleasant sensations. Mastering the senses and increasing the range of the senses. Just like an artist would learn to distinguish between final tonalities, final variations of color, a musician would learn to distinguish between various octaves, various notes. The senses can be trained, refined. And to do that, it has to stop this continuous, unconscious reaction to what is pleasant and what is unpleasant. So the whole training of the senses, the training of the energy, training of the emotions, this is fundamental to education. So these things are happening largely unconscious, habitual. And we have an incredible field of science here in India. Our ancient systems have explored this extensively. And great masters like Sri Aurobindo have synthesized all this and given us very detailed mapping of human psyche, our interior. Profoundly elaborate, detailed mapping of different layers of consciousness, different layers of the instrumentation. How do we tune them? Just like an engineer would work on software, hardware, power supply. Similarly, the yogins have mapped this entire instrumentation, given us detailed sciences, how to refine the senses, how to expand their range, how to open up the ranges of energy that is available to us, how to open up our emotions to a greater influx of finest sweetness of existence, of deepest love, and how to open up beyond the ego-bound little bubble that we are into a greater flow of energy, of wisdom, of love, of sensations, of experiences. And then comes the body, the human body, probably the most sophisticated instrument on the planet, in the whole solar system. So delicate, so marvelous, so refined. It's not just physics and chemistry. There is consciousness in the body. And how do we prepare the body to maximize its potential? Naturally, three things come: the food we eat, the exercises we do, and the sleep. Food has a tremendous impact on the body. Food can make it dull, tamasic, or it can make it rajasic, excited, or it can make it sattvic. It's when that sattvic clarity arises, the body will be capable of receiving luminous clarity of greater knowledge, greater power, greater love that wants to pour into it. So what we eat becomes so crucially important if you want to really upgrade yourself. If you want to bring forth the best potential that is already there in you, what you eat, how you eat, when you eat. And this has to be done consciously. Moving away from tamasic food, moving away from rajasic food, to find what works for your particular body, because each body is a unique construction. It's not moral science. It is something that you can observe directly, what is happening to your body when you put things into it. So refinement of the food so that your hardware is the finest possible. It can receive without cracking up. A greater influx. And to keep it agile, flexible, resilient, that's where regular exercises are required. To keep away the tamas, to keep the body flexible and agile, so that it is receptive, an open body. Otherwise, you might get an inspiring idea, but your body is dull and tamasic, and there is no way you can translate it into action. You may get a call to do things, but you do not have a capacity in the body level to put things into action. And the body is a bundle of habits. When you do something 10 times, by the time body has turned it into an automation. So when you observe closely what the body is doing, your routine activities, you see that it looks conscious, but it is an automation. You're on an autopilot. So you can ride a bike and think about something else. You can eat your food, think about something else. You can take bath, think about something else. Your mind can wander off. Your body does things automatically. That is a fragmentation. The more fragmented you become, less and less control you have over your mind or your body. When you don't have control over your mind and the body, you're disintegrating. So it's very important to put these things together. Train the body, refine the body, remove the tamas from the body. Same way, how to sleep. There is a natural cycle in nature, day and night. There is a biological rhythm in the body. When you align yourself with that rhythm and sleep properly, even learning to how to enter into sleep properly, so that your body is refreshed, recharged, re-energized. These things become very, very crucial if you want to upgrade yourself, to evolve. And these are really the foundations of an education, an integral education where your physical is trained. There is a physical education for it. Your food, your exercise, your sleep, everything, so that the body is receptive, supple, resilient, capable. It's open to new possibilities. It can transmit inspired energy into action. Otherwise, the body becomes a bottleneck. Similarly, when you expand the ranges of your senses, your vitality, your emotional being, there is a whole vital education required to refine our reactive character into something refined, open, subtle, joyful. And there is a will to delight in nature, which gets distorted when it flows through our instrumentation. It becomes desire, it becomes craving. When we step back from all that, to source that will to delight that is arising from a deeper depth, we see that life is opening to new possibilities. Similarly, when the mind is trained to be one-pointed so that it can penetrate into any topic of interest, or it can open itself to receive higher knowledge, the mind is ready. So a mental education, a vital education, a physical education, this becomes the training of the instrumental layers so that we can receive the true mentor within, the inner guide within, the soul, the evolving soul within, its light, its force. And it can express itself through the instrumentation. And this inner guide is our true self. Our instrumental layers, the mind has its own ego, our emotional being has its own ego, even physical has its own limited, bound ego. And beyond all that, deep within is the true soul of delight and love that is ready to burst forth and express through you. But for that, the instrumental layers are to be prepared so that they can receive, they can listen, and they can express. That's how we evolve. And the ranges of consciousness beyond our normal range, the ranges of intuition begins to open up. A greater guidance and a greater force begins to operate through you. And you know that you are not the one who is doing it. There is the true mentor now in charge. And you're following a call, and you realize that you are only an instrument. Nimitta matrena. There is a work to do in the world. There is a world in crisis. And you have taken birth in this world here now. Not by any random chance. You are here because you have chosen to be here. Whether your conscious mind know it or not, your inner guide knows. And there's a work to do. And this nation is privileged to have this 5,000 years of research and development in this field of how to upgrade ourselves, how to evolve rapidly, how to evolve consciously, how to accelerate evolution of consciousness. Hundreds of methods have been developed. Hundreds of teachers have been handing over the knowledge to every new generation. And great beacons of light, like Swami Vivekananda, Sri Aurobindo, they have not only synthesized the ancient past, but they are also propelling us towards a greater future where there is a global civilization that is arising on the planet. And what is India's work in that global civilization? Every nation has its own dharma, its own swadharma, and India has a work to do. And being born in this country, you have naturally inherited that dharma. And having a body woven in this civilizational matrix, you naturally have doors open wide to that. And it's a privilege. Every culture on the planet has its own uniqueness, its own greatness, its own contribution to make to the global civilization. Just like if you look at just India alone, every state has its own uniqueness, unique contribution to make. Similarly, every nation, every culture in the world is offering their best genius to the global civilization. And India has something to offer. And that can be offered only when we dive deep into our own civilizational source. And that is deep within us. And every master from the civilization has done that. We are not here to repeat what the previous generations have done. Every time, the ancient wisdom has to be recast in new forms. The contemporary problems of the world are to be addressed from that new perspective. Solutions to be found. And the challenge is greater than ever before. It's operating at a global scale. There's a tremendous crisis, and our human mind and its power of thought, you can see that is reaching a point where we can no more absorb the explosion of knowledge that is happening in the planet. Mind with its linear thinking is obsolete. Thought with its linear process is obsolete. Artificial intelligent machines can do it better. So who are we as human beings? What is our true identity? We are not thinking machines. We are capable of thinking. But we are beyond that. Living souls in evolution. There's a greater power than the linear thinking. If thoughts are obsolete, what next? What will make us truly human? Distinctly different from the machines that can think better than us. What is that? This is where consciousness comes into the picture. The soul, evolving soul, and greater possibilities in us. If I may use the generic term, intuition. A greater way of knowing. A greater mind, which Sri Aurobindo referred to as supermind. That can see the whole and yet work on the detail. How do we evolve towards it? And Sri Aurobindo explains that the crisis humanity is in is an evolutionary crisis. We are evolving beyond the mind into another whole new strata of consciousness. There's an acceleration of evolution that is taking place. And we can participate in that process consciously by learning to upgrade ourselves consciously. And there's a systematic way to do it. And the guide is already there within, a conscious power. Learning to come in touch with that, surrendering to it, opening to its light and force. So that our limited mental knowledge and will are replaced by something vaster, something greater, which will open new possibilities, new pathways. And that's the call upon this nation and its youth. There's a work to do. There's a crisis. And we are here to deal with it. This means a whole new education An education that is centered around the soul and its possibility, centered around consciousness and its possibility, its evolution, so that we can deal with the modern challenges from a vaster harmony, a vaster power, vaster comprehension. Open ourselves to a greater power than what we normally possess. We can be willing instruments of a greater force that is already in motion. What Swami Vivekananda and what Sri Aurobindo has set in motion. There's a great stream that is arising, to which we can open ourselves. They are great living powers. They do not belong to the past. They are leading us towards the future. A future that is unimaginable. A new Satya Yuga that is unimaginable. A new creative possibility that is unimaginable. So welcome to the adventure. Welcome to the adventure to embark upon this journey. And great warriors who took birth in this country join the stream, this light, this force. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Before we move on to the questions and answers, I would like to ask you to summarize this whole session in 2 to 3 liners, so that it's easier for our viewers to judge it.
Sure. Imagine yourself to be like a seed. There is an inner potential and there is an inner guide. And you can train yourself, your mind, your emotions, your energy, your senses, your body. This can be educated and trained to listen to that inner guide, your inner mentor, and its calling. And once you learn to listen to that, your process of awakening and acceleration of evolution will be set in motion. And you have taken birth for this great adventure of that evolutionary transformation that is possible. That's the gist of it.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Throughout this session, we've received more than 2,500 questions related to the session. Well, it was a beautiful, insightful session. Thank you very much, sir. I've taken the liberty of shortlisting a couple of questions that occurred in a repetitive manner. So we have Kushi Mala asking that how can we meditate in an effective manner, given that the current situation of life is not one of the highest quality of what life can offer. How can we meditate effectively?
To learn to meditate, first of all, one must learn to concentrate. By concentration, I mean the ability to gather all the scattered threads of consciousness and make it one-pointed. Now, this can be done in any little activity we do. Though you may do it in a sitting posture in the beginning and not to do it in a long duration, but 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, just learning to be just gathered. So the mind become one-pointed, ability to hold the wandering attention consistently and persistently in a gathered state. That is the starting point, dharana. And better not to do it in a long duration because the mind will wander off. That's its very nature. It can be practiced. Say, for example, you are drinking a glass of water. Just that drinking can be in a gathered state. Just 1 minute, less than a minute. You're practicing to gather. The more you repeat, the muscle memory builds up, the will power grows, and you will be able to be in a gathered stage for a longer and longer duration. Once you learn to gather and hold for a longer duration, then you are ready for meditation. And there are hundreds of forms of meditation. One of the forms is to just concentrate on the breath itself, the natural breath, and observe the natural breath. And stay longer, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just observing the breath. See how the breath is leaving the body, relaxing into it, surrendering into it. Mind will wander off, but bring it back. Similarly, you focus on the heart center to focus on the inner guide. Here again, you need the power to gather and concentrate, to get the inner guidance. Staying focused unwaveringly. So that's the training required for the mind to gather, to focus, and direct it. Through that, the capacity for meditation will increase. And do it in small intervals, but repeat multiple times. Repetition is the key. Not so much the long length of your practice, but repetition. Anything you repeat will become a muscle memory. And the body would know how to be gathered. That will be the readiness for practicing meditation, and you will discover through that process. So remember this, gathering, scattered attention being gathered, one-pointed. Upon that foundation, the rest can be built. You can take the next question.
Sure. Thank you. Moving on, we have just received this very interesting question from Ruchi Kumari. She says that throughout your session, you refer to the inner guide. Is this inner guide the instinct in the layman's language that we call the gut feeling? Is it the instinct that you're asking us to follow?
I'm not referring to the instinct. There are three things: instinct, reason, intuition. These are three different layers. Instinct is pre-rational. Animals have the instinct. Plants have the instinct. They are instinctively in harmony with the larger nature. They follow their instinct very smoothly, unwaveringly, because they do not have the complexity of a rational intelligence, a mind that thinks for itself. Whereas when it comes to human beings, we have the thinking, rational intelligence. And we are operating with that. It is not capable of pure instinct. We lost that pure instinct. What we have is a mixture of various habits of the body, various habits of the senses, various habits of our emotional being, various habits of our energy working through the body. We call it instinct. Though it has its place, normally it is very limited to those particular instrumental layers and their needs. What we need to listen to is, when you focus on deep into your heart center, often you see that when you do something that is inappropriate, there is a discomfort deep in the heart. That's a sign. That's an indication. There is something going wrong here. The more you listen to that discomfort, you realize there is a sanction or no sanction. When you do the right thing, there's a gentle expansion in the heart, which is very different from a vital excitement, nervous excitement, but a gladness that grows within when you do the right thing. A quiet joy and that gentle sanction from within. That's the beginning of the inner guide. So I would put aside the word instinct to represent that more unconscious, habitual drives and movements coming from lower nature, our lower instrumentation. Then true intuition is way above, to which we do not normally have access, but it can reflect deep in the heart. And heart says, with that sweet gladness, gentle nudge, gentle withdrawal of sanction, a gentle contraction, or a gentle movement in the heart region. So it's very important to establish that inner peace, clarity, so that we can feel it very, very clearly. And it is way below and deep within or behind the emotions. There is frontal emotions constantly jumping around, reacting to things. So when we quieten down, there is this gentle presence that leads, that guides. So let's distinguish it from the instinct and see that this can open the doors of intuition.
Thank you very much, sir. Before we move on to the next session, I believe we have time for one more question. I've found it quite an interesting question. Towards the beginning of your session, sir, you mentioned that one must take a break to contemplate one's situation. The question that arises here, how do we stop from turning that break that we take for contemplation into turning to a break of procrastination?
Yes, there is always the possibility of falling into inertia, tamas, and procrastination. So what is very central to the process is, do you have a living question? A dynamic question which is demanding a quest, a journey, an investigation. It's burning within you. If there is no such burning thirst within you, you're bound to fall back into old routines and habits, and inertia, and procrastination. So always look for what is it that is burning within you, a living question. Do you have a trail to explore? Do you have a question that is very central to your life? Without it, you fall back. So look deep within to see, am I living on the surface, or do I really have a quest that is deep, a concern that is wide, beyond my life, my little circle of comfort? Look at the world around. What can I do? What does the world need? What is going on? Do you have a deep question? Then you are on the trail of that inquiry. Then every hour that is free is to follow on that trail. Otherwise, it will be a superficial fall back into inertia.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Well, I'd like to thank you on the behalf of the National Youth Festival and as well as all the viewers for taking out time and answering all the questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Manoj Pavitran. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back shortly at sharp 11:30 a.m. for the next session. Stick around and make the most of it. Hello. Sir, I have two questions.
Manoj Pavitran साहब आई स्पॉटलाइट